Welcome back to the Michelangelo Signorile Show. My name's Joe Sudbay, and I'm really excited right now to be joined by my good friend, Joan McCarter from Daily Kos. Welcome back to the show, Joan.
I'm glad to be here, Joe. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you could be here because you always help us kind of sort through what's happening on Capitol Hill. You watch it so closely. We're in a place right now where there's a lot of negotiating happening about the president's Build Back Better agenda. It's gotten a little ugly. It's gotten very intense. And one of the things that really jumped out to me over the weekend was there was a CBS poll that said only 10% of Americans seem to know what's in the plan. And the things that they do know about, they like. And we've seen so many polls along those lines that the Democrats could actually be delivering on very popular programs, reining in prescription drug prices, expanding Medicare, help for childcare, help for community college. There are, in dealing with the climate crisis, Joan, there's so much good in this. What the hell are Democrats on the Hill doing? And it's not all Democrats. It's a small group of Democrats. What's going on?
If I knew that, I could become very rich in coming up with a solution. I don't know. I can't get inside of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema's heads, or what's his name from New Jersey in the House, Gottheimer. It's money. That's part of it. We looked today at some of Joe Manchin's personal and political fundraising, and gosh, it's coming a lot from the fossil fuel industry. So that's definitely a factor. It can't be their political futures because, as you say, this stuff is really super popular. And not passing this stuff would be really super unpopular and make it very difficult for them to ever be in the majority again. So what's going on? I don't know. The psychology behind all of this is a mystery. The money behind it, however, is not. And there's an awful lot of money going into keeping these people unhappy with Biden and unhappy with Democrats and fighting this agenda.
Yeah, it's really Tom Hartman, who is on the show before Mike's and is terrific, writes the Hartman Report. And his column today was Sinema's Reign Shows How Political Corruption Can Destroy America Like Metastasized Cancer. And he just digs into all the money that she's gotten, the support she's gotten from the chamber types and the business community, and how, we can't pretend this isn't a reality. But you look at these folks and you're like, to me, and this is why I'd never be an elected official. I don't understand how, when you have that amount of power to do good for your constituents, and Joe Manchin's constituents certainly need help. They get a lot of federal help as it is. And Kyrsten Sinema, her constituents sure do, especially when it comes to the issue of climate and the Colorado River drying up and what that could mean. And she's, in reports said that she's willing to cut $100 billion from the Build Back Better agenda on climate-specific issues. These are the things that, just really make you wonder. And you actually did a post today about how both of them are, and your title is, Manchin and Sinema play a dangerous game with the planet's future. Talk a little bit about that.
This is probably the last chance for the United States to make a big difference in halting. We can't stop climate change, but we can slow it down. We can not reach the really horrible tipping point of, life on Earth not really being able to happen anymore. But it's got to happen really soon, and it's got to happen in the United States. And Manchin and Sinema are both directly fighting against letting any kind of legislation, letting any kind of real effort from the United States to slow carbon emissions from happening. Manchin wants his committee to have the sole jurisdiction overriding energy rules. And Sinema, like you said, wants to take $100 billion out of the Build Back Better plan for climate change action. It's astounding. It's mind-boggling.
It really is, and it's literally life-threatening, planet-threatening, and that's not being hyperbolic. This is where we are. One of the things I think so many of us who worked hard to elect Democrats, elect a Democratic president, elect a Democratic-controlled Senate, a Democratic House, are frustrated by is this kind of, and this is something I see happen in Washington all the time, particularly on the Democratic side. I'm sure it happens on the Republican side, but we're more attuned to it, that they are having these squabbles. We can't, Sinema won't even say what she wants and is backing away from positions she took when she ran for election. Manchin is just being Manchin. You've got the sabotage squad in the House that includes people like Josh Gottheimer, who you mentioned, and Jared Golden, another one who represents a district that would be greatly helped by the Build Back Better agenda. And they're all making their claims, and they're all willing to undermine Biden's agenda and hurt the Democratic Party. And it's like, if they get so caught up in their own power and their own ego that I just wonder sometimes, maybe they don't care, but if you take a step back and say, holy shit, what are we doing right now? We have this incredible danger of losing our democracy, destroying our planet, and I'm worried about, spending an extra $100 billion a year on, making sure kids are educated or parents can work and have childcare or protecting the planet. It seems so trivial in the big picture, Joan. And this is what I find completely maddening.
It's trivial, it's ridiculous, and it's such a disservice to their constituents, because
Yes.
what we're talking about in a lot of this is funding new R&D for clean energy, creating jobs in new clean energy and manufacturing that will last for decades. That will turn West Virginia from a coal-devastated state into something that can maybe innovate on clean energy. How you cannot look to the future and think, I've got to set up a future for my constituents that is the best possible one, and instead say, well, I'm going to steal everything I can while I can, and I guess just be that selfish. It's hard to see what else it can be besides selfishness. Maybe neither of them think that they're going to remain in office. Maybe they don't want to remain in office and just want to get as much money amassed as they can. This could go for some of these House members too, and set themselves up to be lobbyists, after the next election. Particularly with Sinema, it's very hard to know what she's doing, because she's got to know it's going to be very hard to get reelected in Arizona. She might be thinking she'll switch parties, but she can't. Can she really be so deluded as to think that she would be elected as a Republican? Does she really have that great a sense of self and that big of an ego to think she'll overcome what she has been up until now so that Republicans will accept her? I have a hard time believing that. So all I can think is that they really are not looking at a future. They're just getting everything they can out of this now while they can.
Really, it does seem that way. And I look at someone like Sinema, and we've talked about her, and I've talked about her on this show, and we knew her years ago, back when she was a progressive, or purportedly a progressive. And, I do think she does have a big enough ego to think she could win, because she thinks she's figured out how to maneuver this. And And, she's the one who thinks that she's come up with this great strategy. But, one of the things I think that cannot be underestimated is, and this is something that the DC kind of political insider punditry crowd don't really understand. They're all poo-pooing the people who are bird dogging her and challenging her. Those are the people that got her elected. Those are the people that got her into office. And last time I was on the show, I had Kai Newkirk on, who was setting up a fund to start, to finance a primary opponent if need be. And I got a couple callers afterwards from Arizona. And one thing you get a sense from anyone you talk to from Arizona is just the intense betrayal they feel. And betrayal is a terrible feeling about a politician. When you invest your time and your money and you do the door knocking and you send the letters and you go to the fundraisers and you do all that work, which so many folks did in 2018 to turn that state and an elected Democratic senator, and you've been sold out, it is hard to overcome that. It is just one of those feelings that, I'm sure it won't show up in any of their polling. It won't show up in any of the conversations amongst the kind of media elite, but it's a real thing.
It's a big problem, and it's a big problem for her as it defines her personality if she's really thinking she can get in with the Republicans, because they're going to see that, and they're going to know she's perfectly willing to betray anybody. So they may use her to great extent while they can, but they're not going to trust her, and they're not going to put any trust in her and give her any kind of opportunity to betray them as well. So it's a strange strategy she's pulling here. But what I want to turn to is what can happen on the other side. How can she be stopped? And I think part of it is time that all of the rest of the Democrats and Joe Biden stop coddling the two. They really have to have much more put at stake in this. That could include the Energy and Natural Resources Committee that Manchin chairs. Take that chair away from him, or at least threaten it. Say, I'm the president, I have the bully pulpit, and I can do a lot about what happens in Arizona and in West Virginia, and you guys have to think about that. The rest of the Democratic conference has to stop letting them do this. Bernie Sanders has been pretty good, coming out strong last week saying, look, these two are holding the 48 of us hostage, and that's got to stop. The other 48 have to start talking about it, too.
I think that's really important. I do think we need to hear more from the president. I mean, over the weekend, we saw a lot of articles in Politico. The president's decline is alarming is their headline. There's an article on the front page of the Washington Post about how, why Joe Biden's approval is dropping, and who are the people who are feeling disillusioned and disappointed right now. That is real. I mean, the polling's picking it up. His approval ratings are dropping. It's on his shoulders. Look, and we also have, and I mentioned this at the top of the show, we have Republicans who are, joining with Trump and willing to undermine our democracy. We have Republican governors around the country who didn't mind that the Delta variant took off in their states. We saw the job numbers the other day. They weren't as great as they could have been because of the Delta variant. And they see Biden getting the blame for this. So sure, they lost some of their constituents, but guess what? They might get power. I really feel like it is time for the president to lean in more. What are your thoughts on that?
It's absolutely time. I mean, this is his whole agenda at stake, and we can see that he's capable of doing it. He did it with the American Rescue Plan, the big COVID-19 relief program. He came in strong. He said, we've got to get this done. He built up a lot of momentum, and it was a really big, significant, sort of ground-shaking thing that he did. It was huge. And then it all sort of has fizzled away as he decided, well, he had this one big success, and now Republicans see that he can do this, so they'll work with him. Is that what he's thinking? I don't know, but it's time he takes the reins. Reminds everybody that he is the president. He's done some pretty good stuff on COVID. He could go further on vaccine mandates. Like, say, everybody who wants to get on an airplane has to be vaccinated. That would be a nice start. But he also has to take control of his party. And he's got to get these two in particular and the handful of House moderates, centrists, they're not really that moderate, get them in line. Use the bully pulpit. There is power to the presidency, and Republicans are sure happy to use it. He's got to use it too, or we're completely lost. We're already looking pretty bleak for the midterms, knowing that Republicans are putting people in place who will happily ignore election results that might go toward a Democrat in the future. It's got to be stopped now. I mean, really, we are sort of at an existential moment on so many fronts: climate, democracy, the economy. It's a really scary time, Joe.
It really, I find it really frightening. And, I think our democracy is in danger. Our planet is in danger. And I feel like, if you're inside the DC bubble, you somehow can overlook this. But I don't understand why. I mean, and this is, I keep coming back to this, is I feel like Democrats on Capitol Hill, and granted they're being, held hostage by Sinema and Manchin, but I do feel like we need to see more from leadership on the Democratic side on the Hill. And, I also feel like the media does a horrible job of understanding the moment we're in. And, I played clips from Chuck Grassley, the top ranked, the longest serving Republican senator, and Steve Scalise, the number 2 House Republican, at the top of the show. And both of them are right in line with Donald Trump. Grassley portraying Trump as some kind of victim of the January 6th investigation, and Scalise refusing to say the election wasn't stolen. Like, that's dangerous. And I just feel like a lot of us are out here saying, holy shit, this is dangerous. And in the Capitol bubble, it's kind of like business as usual. What's your sense of that?
I think you're absolutely right, and it's pretty terrifying. And part of it is coming from our leadership, acting as though all of this is the normal course of business. Yeah. I don't really understand how we can approach all of this as though it is entirely normal. You don't have Pelosi and Schumer every day saying, look what happened on January 6th, and they are trying to normalize this. You've got Joe Biden still thinking somehow that it's the same Senate he served in all those years ago, and he can jolly everybody around and make everybody happy when Chuck Grassley, the dean of the Senate, as you say, is backing Trump up on the big lie. This isn't normal. Nothing is normal anymore. It actually hasn't been since the Supreme Court declared George W. Bush the winner in 2000, but it's gotten much, much, much scarier. And I don't know if it's a generational thing. If because we've got leadership who's been around forever, they just can't step away from it to see what's going on. Their mindset is so stuck in the past that they can't adjust to what's going on now, or whether they're frightened. I have no idea. Again, I can't get in these people's heads. But something is going to have to change, and it's going to have to change awfully darn soon.
Absolutely right. And this week, the Senate is on recess, a state work period, which means they'll all be out raising money, not meeting with their constituents, because who bothers to meet with constituents these days. The House comes in on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So what we'll probably see a lot of this week is what we've been seeing for too many weeks, is reporters chasing around Democrats asking for comments and Republicans refusing to do anything that might help the nation or their constituents. It is, I just find this perilous times. And I feel like, I just remember back to November, December, when a lot of us were saying, oh my God, Trump wants to do a coup. He wants to steal the election. And you had a lot of the smarty pants crowd kind of rolling their eyes saying, oh God, they're so dramatic. They're so dramatic. We're not the Chicken Littles here. Like, this shit is really happening. It is a dangerous time. And our elected officials, Democrats, need to deliver big for their constituents. Stop fighting. Like, what they're fighting over is such bullshit. It's like minor stuff compared to so many other things that need to be done. Joan, what are you watching? What are the things on your horizon that you think we should keep an eye on over the next few days and weeks?
We're going to see the House come back. I think the House actually is only in tomorrow.
Okay.
Briefly, to vote on the Senate extension of the debt ceiling. And I think they're gone for the rest of the week because they're still taking the Columbus Indigenous People Day holiday. So that will happen. And we already have the next threat from McConnell, who's wrote a letter to President Biden saying, that's it, last one. We're not going to help Democrats on the debt ceiling ever again. So there's going to be discussion on that as well. And continued, hopefully not, public negotiation over the Build Back Better plan, this big reconciliation package. I'm really hoping to see enough pressure from, I don't know whether it's us, constituents, to our senators saying, time to start putting Manchin and Sinema on the spot and get this done for us. Same in the House. We've got to turn the tide somehow against Manchin and Sinema on this reconciliation package. We've got to say, look, this is the stuff that has to be done. This is the stuff that people want. It's going to be popular, and it's got to pass. It's got to pass by Halloween. So then we can turn to how we're going to fix the debt ceiling and possibly get rid of the filibuster in order to do it. Right. The other thing to think about is what's going to happen in Texas on the abortion bill, because that's back in the courts, and we have the Supreme Court thinking about abortion in the next few months. So there's a lot. It's going to be a very, very difficult fall.
It is indeed. And we also have the Virginia elections coming up and the New Jersey elections, and the Virginia elections are such a bellwether, and all the pundits are starting to look at that to look for tea leaves. So a lot on the agenda, as always, and I think all of our listeners know that this, and I know they do. They call their members of Congress. If it's even if you live in a Democratic district, call them and tell them you need action. They need to put more pressure on their leadership. They need to put more pressure, certainly if they're Democratic senators, put pressure on their colleagues, because we need to do this. We need to do this to save our democracy, to save our planet, and to save lives around the country. Joan McCarter, it is always such a joy to talk to you on Twitter at Joan McCarter.
I don't know if today was a joy. I think it was pretty doom and gloom today. I'm sorry about that.
No, it was grim. It was grim, no doubt. But for me, just hearing your voice has a calming effect on me. So I appreciate that. And you always can be found on the front page of Daily Kos, an invaluable resource for all of us progressives. Thank you, Joan. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, Joe. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. This is Joe Sudbay. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
The Michelangelo Signorile Show on Sirius XM.